etadadhyatmam parokshena pradarshitam yat paroksha priyo devo Arhishman etadadhyatmam parokshena pradarshitam yat paroksha priyo devo Bhagavan Vishwabhavana. Ladies, please. Parhishman etadadhyatmam parokshena pradarshitam yat paroksha priyo devo Bhagavan Vishwabhavana. Parhishman etadadhyatmam parokshena pradarshitam yat paroksha priyo devo Bhagavan Vishwabhavana. Can announce the Tamil translation is in the prasadam room. Barhishman, O King Prachina Barhi, Etat, this, Adhyatmam, narration of self-realization. Parokshena, indirectly. Pradarshitam, instructed. Yat, because. Paroksha, priyaha, interesting by indirect description. Devaha, the Supreme Lord. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Vishwabhavanaha, the cause of all causes. Verse translation. My dear King Prachina Barhi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, is celebrated to be known indirectly. Thus I have described the story of Puranjan to you. Actually, it is an instruction for self-realization. Purport. There are many similar stories in the Puranas for self-realization. As stated in the Vedas, Paroksha priya iva hi devaha. There are many stories in the Puranas that are intended to interest ordinary men in transcendental subjects, but actually these refer to real facts. They are not to be considered stories without a transcendental purpose. Some of them refer to real historical facts. One should be interested, however, in the real purport of the story. Indirect instruction is quickly understandable for a common man. Factually, the path of Bhakti Yoga is the path of hearing directly about the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho. But those who are not interested in hearing directly about the activities of the Lord, or who cannot understand them, can very effectively hear such stories and fables as the one narrated by Narada Muni. Bahishman etadadhyatmam parokshena pradarshitam yat paroksha priyo devo Bhagavan Vishwabhavana. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Nama Shreshtham Nanamapi Shaktiputramattra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagratam Urupuring Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Atafada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadatam Purjana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This is the last verse in the series of chapters in Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, in which Sri Narad Muni narrates the story of Puranjan to King Prachina Barhishat. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of stories. This one in particular is allegorical. You know what that means? Allegorical? Narada wanted to instruct Prachina Barhishat, thinking that he must be good because he comes from a good family, but he's off course. He's involved in gross animal killing and sense gratification. And he thought, well, if I just go and tell him you're in Maya, he might not be able to accept it very easily. Just like even Krishna with Arjuna. He didn't just tell him you're in Maya. He said you're speaking as if you know what you're talking about, but actually you don't. But he had to explain it and make it clear to him. Which took up the whole Bhagavad Gita. So, Narad told a story. Story we think of just some stories, make up some story. Now they have in India also on the TV some soaps, they call them soaps, some stories. It's not real, but it has some semblance of reality, and if you agree to pretend that it's real, then you can enter into the story and be entertained by it. Narad Muni's purpose was not to entertain, but to instruct. So he told a story, and Prachina Barhishat, Barhi in short, or Bahishman, he thought, well, it's interesting to listen to stories, and there may be something instructive. So by seeing the story, he could understand that the hero, the main protagonist, is on a wrong course. But he didn't recognize that actually I'm doing the same thing myself, and now I'd had to tell him, actually it's you. It was weird enough as a story, or unusual enough, that the snake protecting the city, and he couldn't understand. And then it sounded like some fantastic story, but then Narad Muni explained it to him, and he could understand and say, oh yeah. Because if you're listening to the story, you think that, well, if I was in that situation, I wouldn't do that. I'd be more intelligent. I wouldn't get involved and trapped by a woman and then have to take another birth. I'd be more smart than that. But then he could see the fault of the character in the story, but he couldn't see the fault in himself. So when Narad pointed out to him, actually, you're doing exactly the same thing. the Puranjan is a fictional character based on yourself. Then he realized, oh yeah, actually that's true. And this way, Narad instructed him indirectly, paroksha. Paroksha priyo devaha. Paroksham cha mam priya. What is the same thing? Paroksha vadarishaya paroksha cha mama priyaha. Krishna says to Uddhava that I like these indirect methods of instruction, which the rishis, they generally instruct in an indirect way. So this is the story. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of stories. Srila Prabhupada writes in his introduction to the Krishna book that people, they like stories. So people are very fond of stories. So let them read Krishna book, because by reading different stories you won't get benefited. In the Western world there's a whole long tradition which is considered high culture of storytelling in complex stories, in novel forms and this. In India also there's huge number of stories, that Katha, Sagar or something like that. There's thousands of folk stories which are written down. Okay, but not like this. They have, just like in Russia, maybe that's the longest fictional story in the world, that War and Peace by Tolstoy, which I read once in English translation. It's a very, very, very boring book. But I had this thing, if I started I should finish it, so I took my... And there's so many stories, Shakespeare's stories, and some of them are based on truth, so it's semi-true, historical novel and all this kind of. And some of them, it's just completely made up, but it has enough semblance with reality that people can identify with it to some extent or another, and they get absorbed and think, oh, that was a really good story, and then what do you learn from, and then at school we have to study these ridiculous stories. Well, they don't seem ridiculous. They have some semblance of reality. What was that we had to study at school? There are 4 sisters and how they got married to 4 men. What was the name of that? Pride and Prejudice. You never heard of it. You didn't lose anything by not hearing of it. I had to study these things at school. I'm glad I escaped from the school. That was one of the best days of my life, leaving school forever. So, stories, and then we started I think for months and months we had to go through and explain this and this and this, and some completely ridiculous story. So Prabhupada gave the Krishna book. People they like stories, then they can get something real, because it's a true story. Generally when we say story we think of a fiction, isn't it? And if it's actually true, then we say true story. So to differentiate, because mostly people prefer non-true or fiction, just completely made up. Although I saw somewhere there are 20,000 biographies or something, or 60,000 people write biographies. Some people, their goal in life is to have their biography written, and if they can't wait, they do it themselves while they're still alive. They think they're so important that people should hear about me. So, and people like, there's some story. So, true story, we're all living a story. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sings, Prabhu hey sunamo dukh hai kahini. Oh my Lord, he listened to my, that's an English saying, tale of woe. The word woe, no one will ever use it, or tale, T-A-L-E, that hardly, but tale of woe, it means sad story. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks. Listen, just hear the sad story of my life. And if you hear his song, it doesn't sound that sad. He's just, he's born, and well, before he's born, he prays to Krishna, I'll worship you. He forgot about it as he came out, as he becomes an adore chale. He becomes the young child, the object of affection for everyone, and he grows up and he plays with the boys, and then he grows a little while, then he studies, and then he gets married, and then he has so many worries. And now at the end of his life, he's wondering, what should I do? I didn't worship you, I forgot all about it. So this is his, but it sounds just like a very ordinary story. And in fact, everyone's story is a miserable story, so he's just putting that out, that life in this material world without Krishna is miserable. So he tells the story of his life. Of course, in that song it's just summarized, and at the request of one of his sons, he did write his autobiography also. So, true story. We all have a story of our life. And there may be 20,000 biographies, but there are so many more people in the world than 20,000. So there must be something. Most people's life isn't very interesting. So they imagine some story. So are they daydreaming, or they lock into some other story. They become very interested in politics or sport or something like this to make their life. Otherwise, if you want to write a biography, say someone living in this housing area at the back here, what are you going to write? There's nothing interesting. Not anything. Maybe their quarrels, not very interesting. Not as interesting as the life of, say, Jayalalitha or something. If you got the real story with all the corruption and everything, it would be quite interesting. Every American president, the first thing they do after they get thrown out of office is to hire a writer to write their story for them. And it's interesting. You get all the inside stories of how they made this decision and that decision and this and that. So, stories. Everyone lives their life according to a story. Now this is what I want to get into here. That the whole world is running on stories. For instance, there is a story that originally, before there was any universe, there was nothing. And then nothing exploded. If nothing explodes, then the result is nothing, right? Because if you multiply by 0, you get 0. But anyway, according to this story, everything exploded, and then it all rushed around and made gases and solids and condensed. And then on one blob of this mass of matter, which had come into being from nothing, remember it's a story, then all the chemicals formed together, and some of them started to eat other pieces of chemicals, and then the most advanced, they made different species of life. The most advanced is humans, especially white humans who did all this investigation. And then they wrote it down in a storybook with the name Scientific Evolution. So that's one story. And that's a predominant story in the world today. It's taught in the schools. But it's not taught as a story. It's taught as a fact. And people live their life according to this. They think that, well, I'm just a bunch of chemicals formed by evolutionary processes, and I'll die, and then it will all be over. And other people think that there are other stories. There's a story of how there was one man and one woman in the beginning, and they lived together happily, Then one day they ate an apple, and after that the whole human race is suffering. But don't worry, Jesus came, and if you bathe yourself in his blood, then you won't go to hell. Otherwise you go to hell. So that's another story, and many people live their life according to this story. And for them it's not a story, for them it's, they're really convinced. And time to time someone comes along and says, Jesus is coming in 2 years, so sell all you've got and give it to me, and we'll all go to Jesus in just 2 years. And they count down, and time comes and it passes, and like that. Then someone else comes up in another part of the world and says, Jesus is coming in 2 years. And many people believe it. People have to live according to some story. What's the difference between a human and an animal? One difference you can say is that humans have some kind of story about everything. Of course, most people don't think about what is going on in the world. They're quite happy to get whatever they're told. And from the beginning of life, everyone is told a story. From the very childhood, they become part of a story. The way the people around them are living, they just take that story to be true. Don't suck your thumb, they tell the child, otherwise the man will come with big scissors and cut off your thumb. That's one story. So the children believe, oh, man will come and cut off my thumb. And when they get older, they think, well, yeah, it's probably not true. But they tell the story to their own children. Until psychologists come and say you shouldn't tell such stories to children, and just let them suck their thumb. They tell another story. Psychologists tell various stories about how you have to bring up your children according to different psychological considerations. And they think that, well, the children were better. Although since all this psychology has come up, it's become very prominent in the Western world, we don't see that people are becoming better for all their psychology. In fact, people seem to be becoming worse. So maybe we should throw out all the psychology and go back to stories of men coming with scissors and cutting off your thumbs. Maybe. Well, different stories. We all have different stories that we live according to. Here's a story very common in India today, that told to the children, you have to study hard, work hard, and then you can become a success. Right? Stavapriya, you heard that story. You heard that story? Many heard that story. You heard that story, Chittahar, you heard that story. Can become a success. It's a great story. People believe it. And they plug in, I got to work hard and become a success. It's a story. You might become what people call a success, but there's not much fun in that. No, not much benefit. Fool's paradise. Srila Prabhupada often used to say, it's the English saying, fool's paradise. How wonderful. How wonderful. I got a nice car, nice house, nice wife. But we don't find, we see so many people with a nice house, a nice car, a nice wife, and they're not happy. There's fool's paradise. Or there are so many sayings. Living in La La Land. You wouldn't have heard of that. That's an English saying. La La Land means you just la la la. You don't know what's going on, but you think, it's so wonderful. I often, several times I said this, that way back, I think when I first came to India, the big Bollywood heroine was called Rekha. You know her name also. Huh? Even in Tamil Nadu, after so many years, you still know. See, they become so famous. So eventually it came in the news, someone married her. So there must have been millions of people thinking, oh, how wonderful. For him, not for me. I wanted to marry her. And then the news came after a few months he committed suicide. Poor guy. So he was thinking, I married Rekha. But it wasn't so wonderful. I don't know if she caused it. She might have had something to do with it. Anyway, it wasn't, the story didn't work out as well as he had hoped it would. We shouldn't really laugh. But what to do? You can laugh or cry. So living in La La Land, just imagining something is wonderful. That story is there in the Bhagavatam and many places also. The man, he's being chased by an elephant, wild elephant who wants to kill him, and he runs and he falls over a precipice. So he manages to catch something and hold on to it. It's the root of a tree at the side of the precipice. So he's just saved. He says, oh, I'm saved. And the elephant is up above him, so he looks down to see. It's a long fall, and even if he falls down, there's a poisonous snake waiting at the bottom. So he can't go up and he can't go down. Then he noticed that there's a rat gnawing on the root, so soon the root is going to fall. He's going to fall down anyway. But in the tree, there's a beehive, and a drop of honey falls and it goes right on his tongue, and he thinks, oh, I'm so fortunate. It's such beautiful taste of honey. So he's such a fool. He's got something nice going on, the honey taste, but he's sure to die a horrible death. He can't escape it. So he prefers imagination. What is this story? We all like to hear a story. Imagination. Some imaginary story. You tell a story, we say stories for children, and no one takes it very seriously. Tell me a story about Jackanory, some fairy, what do they call it? Nursery rhymes. You know, it's just some silly story, just to entertain children. Or there's another saying. You must have sayings like this in your own language also. Cock and bull story, they say in English. You know they're saying, they still say that in English? It means some absurd story. Maybe the police catch you stealing something and you make up some ridiculous story to try and exonerate yourself, but it's a nonsense. You can't believe it. So everyone's living according to some story or other. We live our life according to some, or a mixture of stories. We believe in the Big Bang, but we also believe in Jesus. Somehow or other we mix it all up. And but generally that story of well, we're just all chemicals, that's becoming more and more accepted all over the world. So when you die, everything is finished. Bhasmi bhutasya dehasya king puna agamano bhavet. When you're born, the body is burned, becomes ashes, and you don't come back, so that's it. It's all finished. There's nothing going on. So we all, people are very much influenced by this. We can call this a meta story, or an overarching story by which we live our life. We're all very much influenced by science in the modern age. If we see a rainbow, what do we think? We think, oh, so glad there's some rain. Here in Tamil Nadu, you'd be very happy to see a rainbow, because rainbows only come with rain. So what is the cause of a rainbow? Anyone remember from their physics class? I think I was taught it in the physics class. What is it? Yeah, light reflects through a drop of water or something. Somehow or other it becomes it's refraction of light. Just like you can do in the laboratory through a crystal. You can show how white light separates into 7 bands or something like that. What's the word for rainbow in Tamil? Is any Sanskrit word for that? Indradhanush. Indradhanush is the Sanskrit word. Means it's the bow of Indra. So previously when people saw a rainbow, they thought that's Indra's bow. Indra sends the rains, and then he shows his bow. And nowadays if you see a rainbow, you might, if you remember your science class, think about light refracting through a drop of water. I can never really understand it, but I'm sure they understand it. How some drop of water somewhere becomes such a big thing in the sky. Or in the cities you don't see, but in the country, especially when the moon is becoming very small, then you can see what's called the Milky Way. What's that called? Akash Ganga. You said that's from Gujarati, huh? Or Hindi. In Tamil they say also Akash Ganga. No. Anyway, that's the idea, that the Milky Way is the Ganga flowing in space. But in modern science they say it's a group, so many planets, and I don't know exactly what they say, but they don't think it's the Ganga anyway. It's some planets or stars or something like that. So we had people in the past had a different story, and now we tend to accept the scientific story, different planets and comets and all this kind of thing. Here's another story. It's not presented as a story, but it's something which people accept. That India's cricket team is a great source of pride for the nation. Right? It's all a big story because it's all meaningless. What is this nation of India? In terms of a political organization, it's a creation of the British, the present Indian nation. And anyway, what's there to be proud of? There's some people from India, you happen to be born in the same country this time round, and they can throw a ball around and hit it with a piece of wood and catch it and run and all these other things better than people from another country. And it becomes a source of pride. Yes, we're proud of our cricket team. So it's a story. The press is, it means the TV, the newspapers, they've created so many stories to keep people interested, so people want to read the news. Actually, there's not much news, real news. News means there's something like an earthquake or a tsunami or something like that. But day to day, there's not that much news going on. So they make politics into a big thing. What so-and-so politician, how he insulted another politician, and this and that. They make a big thing out of politics. Otherwise, who cares? Who cares about what? Or sports, they made a big thing out of sports, how this game and that game and another game and sports heroes, and they just create some. Otherwise, who's going to buy their newspaper? They can just, otherwise they could just put real news today, nothing, try again tomorrow, and then no one's going to buy their newspaper. So they create all this news, some imaginary thing, and they create on the films, the movies. They make a movie, and they create some story, and then there's another whole bunch of stories about the actors in the movies, actors and actresses. And I think in India more than anywhere it's a big thing. How one actor insults another actor, and he marries some actress, and then they divorce, and who cares? But they make people, they create some interest in it, because these people, they're considered something great. Just all, it's on the level of children actually. You tell stories to children and they become entertained, just meaningless. But people, they take it very seriously. They make at the end of the TV series, they make the end of it very interesting. So you wonder what's going to happen next. So you come back to watch it the next day or the next week or whatever. They leave it like that, tantalizing. So it's a way to catch people's interest. Now, some stories people take very, very seriously, and it very much influences the world. For instance, the Christian story, people take it very seriously. People are prepared to die for the sake of Jesus. Or the Muslim story, and then they say, our story is better than your story. If you don't accept our story, we'll kill you, and then your story will end. Or they take it very, very seriously. That Jesus is coming, so we have to go out and fight for Jesus. So some people, they say, we have to stop all this religion and make everything rational. And they insist we have to teach science in the schools because it's very rational, and make people very rational. Of course, whatever the scientists say now is rational. In 50 years, you can be practically sure they're going to be saying something else. So it's maybe not that rational. But one thing they are agreed on, that we don't like religion. So whatever our story is, it's more right than your story. And they compete over different stories. Communism versus capitalism, that story's over. Everyone thinks my story is best, and our story. So from the beginning of life, they indoctrinate people. You have to be a good Indian, develop the nation. Nationalism is very good for the rich people who get the people to sacrifice their life to go to fight in a war. For the people who are making weapons, it's a good business for them. I asked some time ago someone who's in the army, who's posted, at that time was posted on the Pakistan border in Kashmir. Why is it going on year after year? Why can't they settle it? They don't want to settle it. It's politics and business. It's money making. They don't want to settle it. They want it'll go on and on and on. You can have peace talks as much as you like, but the politicians, they want it to go on because somehow they're making money out of it. But the people, they buy into. If you see the newspaper, oh, Pakistan attacked India, on the border, and on the other side of the border in Pakistan say Indians attacked Pakistan. So what do you believe? Who knows what to believe? It's so many different stories. What do you believe? We believe, yes, our Indian press wouldn't lie to. It must have been the Pakistanis because they are bad and we are good. And on the Pakistan side they think, no, it must have been the Indians because they do things like that. We don't do things like that. We're good. So in this way, people tend to believe what they want to believe. They're not interested in the truth. Apashyatam atmatattvam. They're not interested in understanding the science, or they don't see the science of the soul. So from the beginning of life, they're trained. You should be a good Muslim, or a good Hindu, or a good Indian, and this is how you act and talk and walk and think and feel. This is how you live your life, and you feel very comfortable with that. Yes, this is good. This is how we should be. We shouldn't be indifferent in any way. According to the storyline that we're given, we grow up in a certain culture, and we think we should be like that. And if you go outside that, then they ridicule you, just like in science. If some scientist doesn't believe in the Big Bang, they will, the author, or the majority of scientists say, they're just fools. They're not proper scientists, they're misleading people. Or if they don't believe in evolutionary theory, they may give all scientific explanation. No, they're just bad science. They'll write it off. The scientists themselves who believe in Big Bang and biological evolution, it's not that everyone personally studied it in great depth to understand it, but they just presume. All the other scientists say like that, so it must be correct. If anyone asks you, can you prove there is God? You ask them, can you prove there is Big Bang? You ask them. What will they say? Do you have any scientists here? Any atheist demons? Kick on their head with boots type? What will they say? They say science is proof. You believe it? It's just your belief, that's all. That man has descended from a lower species. Can you prove it? No, scientists approve. What's the proof? Can you tell me? They don't know. But they just believe. They believe that story because they're taught it. In ISKCON also we have our dandavats, and they give you the story. Everyone's smiling and happy and nice, and we also have we tell us what we're supposed to believe so that we can fit in and be a good member. And don't ask any silly questions. Just be a good devotee. Good devotee means you believe everything on dandavats and you go on. Don't think too much about anything. So what to do? There are conflicting stories. We all want to live peacefully. So some people say, well, just believe whatever you like, all the story, whatever story you like, you can live by it. Joto mot toto pot. All the stories are the same. Whatever you want to believe, it's okay. Just live peacefully. But then, of course, someone will come along with the story and say, no, my story is, I'm going to blow you up if you don't believe my story. Then how do you say, okay, you live according to the story you like. But it's not going to produce peace. All these peace conferences. Actually, we should send these terrorists to a peace conference and go and blow up those people. If they want to blow up anyone. Because they're just nonsense, wasting time. Peace conference, and fools. They want peace. They should, first of all, they should close all the slaughterhouses. They don't see any link. And they all talk very, Dalai Lama, very good. Promoting peace. What peace? Every day he eats meat. What peace? You're rascal. Hypocrite. So, it's not that they want to say all the stories are the same, live and let live, whisper words of wisdom, let it be, and so on and so on. And then others, no, you can't. We can't have all this religion nonsense, believing in God. We need science education. And someone else say, no, we need Hindu education, or we need Muslim education. And they're fighting over all their stories. And then someone say, hey, it's all meaningless anyway. It's all meaningless. But that's their story. They live their life according to that understanding. You can't escape it. Shraddhamayo yang purusha. Yo yat shraddha sa eva saha. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives an analysis of this. Trividha bhavati shraddha dehinang sasvabhavaja. Sasvabhavaja. Shadhamayo yang purusha yo yat shadha sa eva saha. Krishna says people are in different three modes of nature. And according to the mode of nature when we believe accordingly. Our belief is shaped by the modes of nature, according to the mode of nature we're in. Accordingly, we live our lives. And there may be whole cultures, which are, some culture is more sattvic, some culture is more rajasic, some culture is more tamasic. Tamasic cultures, they tend to get overrun by rajasic cultures, and rajasic cultures, if they're not constrained by some sattva guna, then they also overrun they become more mixed with tamagun, and they overcome the sattvic cultures. But everyone lives according to their particular mode of nature, worldview you can call it. You could say that, well, we say Krishna is supreme, and Krishna is the sarva karana karanam. Everything comes from Krishna, everything rests in Krishna, everything ultimately yat prayatyapi sangvishanti, everything enters into Krishna. So you may say, well, that's just your story, that's another story. They can say like that. And actually there's no way to prove which story is correct. If you say prove something, you can never prove something to someone who doesn't want anything proved. You can always make some objection. The obvious objection to the God story or the Krishna story is, well, we can't see. We didn't. But then, of course, there are so many things that we can't see that we may believe in. Just like people believe in big bangs, which they didn't see. Or they believe in the mind, which they didn't see. Or they believe in subatomic particles, which they didn't see. We believe in all kinds of things that we haven't seen. Then, of course, someone may say, well, I don't believe any of these things, but they do. You can't live Shadhamayo yang Purusha. Krishna says this. Everyone lives according to some kind of faith, and it's not just something that we have to believe because Krishna said it, but it's a fact. If you analyze, everyone lives according to some kind of faith. We live our lives according to some kind of story, something which shapes our life. So when Krishna says this, it's not just something that we believe, but we can practically see that everyone lives their life according to some kind of understanding. We can't prove it. If someone says, prove it, show it. Well, we can, but you have to take the method. It's like if someone says, prove that water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen is a gas, oxygen is a gas. If you join them together, it becomes a liquid. It doesn't seem to make sense. Well, you can prove it. If you agree to take take hydrogen. First of all, can you prove this is hydrogen? What's the proof that something's hydrogen? I don't know. Does anyone here know? You all studied science, I presume. How can you prove? Well, the proof is if you burn it in an atmosphere of oxygen, which means in air, more or less, and then condense it, you get water. Well, wait a minute. We're trying to get water from hydrogen and oxygen. You can't use that as a proof. So what's the proof that something's hydrogen? Maybe you're just cheating me. Oh. So in this way, you can't really prove anything unless we accept some axioms. Something is true. We have to agree on something. Otherwise, these philosophers, they go on and on and on. They're different philosophers, and they come up with different ideas. And someone comes up with some idea, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And then someone comes and says, no, there's something wrong with that. And they'll go on forever like that. They're never going to come to end. The philosophers, they'll never come to any end. They have so many stories which scientists also, they There'll never come any point where they can say, now we know everything. And if they think they know everything, someone will come and say, no, there's something doesn't make sense. Just like the Newtonian physics, they thought, oh, that's it, we got it all worked out. That's it. Now we understand how motion and matter, and then Einstein comes along and says, whoops, something wrong here. And now they're saying, well, maybe there's something wrong with Einstein too. It was inevitable, it had to come. And it will go on and on and on like this. They'll never come to any conclusions. But some things we can accept as real, true. It's not just some fiction. For instance, I'm just saying this theoretically, but to establish a fact, if someone hits you over the head with a hammer, hard, it will hurt. Right? Now you may say, well, it's all just an imagination. It's not real. Philosophically you can say it's not real, but it damn hurts. And you could even be killed by it, and you probably have to go to hospital, and all your nice hairstyle, if you have a nice hairstyle, will be spoiled. It actually happened to me when I was about 14 years old. Someone hit me on the head with something, and that was the end of all my nice hair. So, yeah, it damn well hurts. Pain is real. Suffering is real. You can imagine this world is just all beautiful and wonderful, but there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of suffering. That's a fact. So when Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Dukhalayam, this world is full of misery, it's not an opinion. It's a fact. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha. We can't remember birth, but we can see others' birth. But as far as disease, old age and death are concerned, miserable, suffering is non-arguable with. And janma means you get born to suffer. So this is a fact. There is rebirth. There is reincarnation. Metempsychosis, that's some fancy Greek-derived word. Most people's stories, it's all based on the understanding, I am the body. Right? What was the thing Prabhupada preached about most? I think if we are to make some study of this, the thing he preached about most, we are not the body. We are eternal. But even if people are born Hindus, so they believe in reincarnation, but they live their life in the bodily concept of life. This is a term which I don't think we'll find it outside of Prabhupada's books. The bodily concept of life. Did any of you read, before coming to Srila Prabhupada's shelter, did any of you read any Upanishads or Vivekananda or any such thing? Spiritual books, Hindu books, anyone? Lucky you. Anyway, I don't know, I didn't also. But I don't think they use this term, bodily concept of life. Dehatma buddhi, that is the Sanskrit term. That is the basis of all stories in this material world, in material existence. I am Indra, Indra thinks. I am whatever you may be. Bodily concept. We see in terms of this body. I am Indian. What is that based on? Body. I am the husband of this woman, based on this body and that body. And then there are more bodies come from the union. Deha patya kalatra drishu. Apatya means what falls down from the body, means children. Children, wife, and so on. It's all based on the bodily concept of life. And most people, they don't even think about the bodily concept of life. If you go to people and say, are you in the bodily concept of life? They say, what do you mean? And do you think the body is yourself? What are you talking about? They can't even think of anything else. Of course, I'm the body. What a strange question. Are you? It's like saying, "Are you you?" Because they just presume so much they are the body. They don't question it at all. Of course, it seems like an absurd question. And even the religions, they think there's so much in this bodily concept of life. They think, well, I'll die, and then when Christ comes, He'll revive me. Means the same body. There's so much in this concept. They can't imagine to exist otherwise. This is called, in our story, and the story that Krishna, if you want to call it a story, but we can see how people are so much identifying with this body. But that we get body after body after body is a fact. And there's good evidence. The best evidence is that Krishna says so in Bhagavad Gita, but for people who don't accept that, there's very good evidence that we are born again and again and again. And one thing's for sure, we're controlled. That's another point Prabhupada made again and again and again. We are controlled. We didn't choose what kind of body we get. We can't choose what the weather's going to be like today. There's so many things we can't choose. We don't know what's going to happen. Anything good or bad could happen at any time. We're not in control. But one thing we know, we have to die. We cannot stop that. We are controlled. So Krishna speaks these things in Bhagavad Gita. It's not just some imaginary story. It's a fact. We can't find a better story than this. You can try, but I don't think you'll find anything better than this. Suffering is a fact. However much we may want to fantasize, suffering is a fact, and we want to be happy. There is a means to attain happiness. But first of all, we have to understand who we are, because our suffering begins from getting the story wrong. We get the story wrong that I am this body, and all suffering begins from that. I am this body, I am this mind. Of course, there are many religions who say that we should believe in God, but we don't find anything as what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given, selfless love. People may have love for some deity. They may worship Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva, he gives us liberation. Or they may worship Buddha. Buddha gives us nirvana, moksha. Now, I can never understand why that works, because if he got nirvana, then he's not there to give you nirvana. So how does that work? I don't know. I have to ask a Buddhist next time I meet a Buddhist. There are different Buddhists. Some they pray to Buddha that you help me to become a Buddha. But if you become a Buddha, then you didn't get the goal of life, which is to become nothing, or something like that. Very difficult to understand. And then they say you love Jesus, and then Jesus will send you to heaven, and you'll be happy in heaven. But it's all about what Jesus can do for me. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives the completely selfless love, love for love's sake, and the object of love is Krishna, subject and object. This story, if you may say, well, it's just another story, but by our very nature, we can't avoid it. We have to live our life according to some understanding. So if you look, you won't find something better. But people say, no, this is better. Because they feel like that. They're at that level. Yo yad shraddha saeva satvaki rajasi chaiva. According to the modes of nature, they become attached to some way of thinking. And then their faith in that becomes very strong. What is that? Tameva vidadhamyaham achala shraddha. People, their faith becomes very strong. Krishna helps to make it strong. So we have to live according to some way of thinking. And mostly it's all stories. The big story. We will be happy in this material world. All children's stories end, at least they used to, with, and then they lived happily ever after. Now it's probably the nice little girl killed her grandmother and took the money and bought some heroin. That's probably how the nursery rhymes end nowadays. I don't know. I don't know if they teach people like that. But it often actually works like that. Heroin here, I'm saying the drug, not the... So, don't just live according to some story which someone makes up for you. Try to understand the reality. Atato Brahma Jignasa. After we have seen that this whole material world is simply suffering, have a look. Look for yourself and see. It's simply suffering. Then come to the level of inquiry into Brahma. Brahma is that which is Satchit Ananda, is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. Come to that platform. And then if we're to come to Brahma, then we have to come to, what is that? Janmadhyasya yataha. That from which everything emanates. And what is that Brahma? Kim tad Brahma kim adhyama. Aksharo Brahma paramam. What is that? Ultimately that is Krishna. So you have to take some story. Philosophically, we can't find any, at least I can say, we can't find any better. We can't avoid, there are certain facts we can't avoid. There is pain, we want to be free from pain, we want to be forever happy. These are facts. Krishna consciousness gives the best understanding of that. Now there may be some things which we think, well, okay, but what's that about that Indra's bow being a rainbow? Isn't it light refracted? It may be light being refracted, but that doesn't negate it being Indra's bow also. There are so many things. If we're to accept Krishna consciousness, then there are so many things which, according to the modern, dry, so-called rationalistic, scientific worldview, seem to be completely fantastic. For instance, now next week Ram Navami is coming up. So the Supreme Lord, He killed a demon with 10 heads. Now that's nothing. A demon with 10 heads. I mean, we have Brahmas with billions of heads. Who will believe all those things? Well, why not? People are brought up in the modern so-called scientific worldview in which they only believe what they have heard from scientists and what they see. Then the scientists themselves are coming up with all kinds of weird ideas, really weird ideas. Anyway, accept it on faith. It's good faith. It's this world is full of suffering. We are controlled. We're suffering because of misuse of our tiny independence. We can properly use our independence by admitting that we are dependent on Krishna. We should try to satisfy His transcendental senses instead of satisfying our own senses. Then we can experience pratyaksha gavamam dharmyam susukam karatam avyayam. We can begin to experience here and now how we are entering into the realm of undiminishing great happiness in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. Is there any question about this place? Yeah.
So, for example,
Yeah, there may. Granted, there will be objections. In this talk, I'm practically asking people to, where are you going to put your faith? You have to put your faith somewhere. Most people won't take this path of faith. They'll believe something else. Yeah, so what's your objection?
Now is very popular preaching, like you can't drink wine because some bacteria besides shouldn't that wine be contaminated.
What's that? You can't drink wine?
Wine.
Because it's got bacteria.
Bacteria, it's anaerobic process, you know, it's how the bacteria shit in the wine. And our guru preached that. And
what's this? Who's preaching you can't drink wine? No, we all say we can't preach wine. We can't drink wine. They say because it has some bacteria.
Bacteria with eyes who shit in the wine. What the hell is that? People listen to us and they become atheistic because it's not common.
Oh, you're saying that they're saying why we shouldn't take wine because of some bacteria in it.
Touch some cancer who has disease cancer, like a piece of wood, and cancer disappears. How to preach?
If you touch someone with a piece of wood, they can get free from cancer.
Yeah, they develop some method
I see.
Cure people from cancer.
Cure people from cancer by touching them with a piece of wood.
Of course, people don't believe us.
They don't believe us. Yeah. So better tell the story that Prabhupada told, which Krishna told. There may be so many stories we can tell. But tell this story, true story. Anything else? All right. Hare Krishna. Ah.
Even in Vedic culture, there are Shuddha Bhakti and Veda Vedanta, when Madhavacharya said that hell is eternal, and his system looked like more Christian, because he said that hell is eternal, and we said hell is not eternal. Is it not like all these fairy tales? What is actual truth?
What is the actual truth? If Madhvacharya says hell is eternal, then it must be. We say it's not. So then you just take, just like the word anadi, we take it to mean from time immemorial. So eternal can be eternally conditioned. Nitya baddha. So eternality can be considered in terms of a very, very long time that we can't imagine also. That's one possible answer to that, but it's a complex technical point, which is, I guess this class could open up to any kind of question, but I'm not going to get into that just now. Have you studied that? Madhva's three times. What do they call? Mukta. What is that? Three kinds? I can't remember just now. Three kinds of souls. Yeah. Anyway, Hare Krishna. We'll finish.